quite crazy today. I mean, people don't think of dropping a crore on a luxury car. India is probably the most taxed automotive market in the world. So you're talking about, almost 180% to be given to a vehicle which is imported from any other part of the world. I think it's this whole price to size ratio which is really critical as far as luxury car goes, and that's why I think the center of gravity or the hotspot for all the luxury cars is higher up. Really heartening to see the sedans getting the kind of focus and how they continue to remain a very critical pie of the overall luxury car market, even as it becomes smaller and smaller in the mainstream market. It's amazing that people will start looking at something like Skoda Kodiaq and then finally, almost increasing their budget by 70 to 80% and going for an E-Class. Luxury car sales have crossed the 50,000 mark in the last financial year. Now, that is a significant milestone, even if it is a very small percentage of the overall market size, but that is reason enough for us to talk about it. And that's what we're going to discuss in this edition of Deep Drive, powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
Hi, I'm Ketan Thakkar. Yes, Hormazd, a significant milestone, especially a significant spike after COVID. But much like the overall market, the growth rate are also falling. And one is anticipating this market to really take off with the expected growth in per capita income.
It's still just 1.2%, very, very tiny, let's say, number. You take it compared to China, which I think is 50 times more?
Almost 50 times more. They sell millions of cars. Yes, absolutely. I mean, in fact, post-COVID, with there was this feeling of you live only once, and people were just going crazy, and we have seen with the average price points of luxury car actually moving up.
But I mean, if you look at it, it's quite crazy today. I mean, people don't think of dropping a crore on a luxury car. So
absolutely,
I think it's just gone crazy. I think despite the prices going up significantly, and I think you've got some data on that, the sales are also going up. So there is an appetite to spend. I think there is a slight shift in the way, consumers are behaving right now. I think previous generations, a lot more conservative, didn't want to flaunt their wealth and their cars. But I think in today's Instagram age, everyone has no qualms in kind of buying an expensive luxury car and even flaunting it.
Yeah, absolutely right, Hormazd. In fact, at Mercedes-Benz, what they call it as the top-end vehicle, the top-end vehicle are priced above 1.1 to 1.5 crore. The top-end vehicle segment for Mercedes-Benz used to account for 10% of the overall sales in 2020. Last financial year, it accounted for almost 25% of the market, which means almost
10,000.
Yeah, I mean, for the market, about 7,500 to 10,000 people every year are buying top-end vehicle price about 1.5 crore rupees.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. The spike has been phenomenal. And in fact, the options also are growing. And you are seeing a lot more content. You are seeing a lot more option available from various car manufacturers. And it is pretty visible in the demographic of the market.
Just that the prices have gone through the roof. I think I want to touch on the prices also. Why have they gone through the roof? I think our taxes still very high. In fact, we've always had this hope that taxes will come down. I don't know whether they will now with all the pressure Trump is putting on all markets everywhere in the world. But I think even our rupee has, kind of devalued over the years. That also has pushed prices up. But I think, it's just that the pricing has gone a bit crazy. And I think that may be one of the biggest limiting factors for growth, because every time it starts growing, the prices keep going up. And you get these odd googlies also in terms of some quality control order or something, where you have more on the CBUs.
Absolutely.
Where you have to have, let's say, BSI marking on the wheels, on the windscreen, that sort of stuff. So I think these are also inhibiting factors. But I think the biggest one really is our per capita income.
Absolutely.
I think that needs to really go up. I think people need to earn more to spend more, and especially on luxury cars. Yeah.
Absolutely. When you're talking about tax, I think India is probably the most taxed automotive market in the world. I mean, if I were to give...
You've got some data, isn't it?
Yes, Hormazd. Some crazy numbers here. If you were to compare the sales tax or the GST as we call it in India, for cars, especially luxury cars, 48% GST is levied on the cars. On top of that, you have 22% cess. So at 70%, India is the highest taxed market when it comes to luxury cars. And on top of that, if you were to import it as a completely built import, you have 110% duty. So you're talking about, almost 180% to be given to a vehicle which is imported from any other part of the world.
And I think in the US, it's
about 2.5%. Yeah, I mean,
no wonder Trump is jumping up and down.
absolutely, Hormazd. In fact, let's talk about some numbers. USA, the sales tax is about 5 to 10%. Import duty is just about 2.5%. So effective tax, we're talking about 7.5 to 12.5% only. UK, 20% VAT. Another 10% on import duty. Australia, they have 10% GST. They do have a luxury car tax of about 33%. So the effective rate there is about 43%, but it's a smaller market. Canada is about 5 to 15% tax, plus another 16% of luxury tax and import duty. And in EU, it is about 20 to 25% VAT. So clearly, when you look at the rest of the evolved markets where per capita is higher, the tax is also lower. So, I mean, on both the counts, I mean, one, that those markets can actually absorb those steeper ticket prices, but the taxes are also lower. Here are lower, we have a lower per capita, and on top of that, we are very highly taxed.
It's a double whammy as far as growth goes. But I also think, it boils down to a very historic issue or, part of a legacy that, evolving from a very socialist economies that we were, regulate. Luxury cars are seen as sin. They need to be taxed. They are, it's
seen anti-poor.
Seen anti-poor. And, I think obviously the tax on it is really, really high. Though I think, it's crazy. I think one hopes that taxes will be dialed down, especially on CBUs a bit, because honestly, they aren't going to affect the local industry at all, which is quite, well established,
absolutely
thriving. And again, we've said many times before, it's really got the top players have a very strong hold on this market.
Right.
So I think reducing duties on, imports is really not going to make any difference at all. In fact, customs collections could be even higher because of the higher volume there. So, but I mean, I think really, I think the prices are really crazy. I think an E-Class today costs as much as an S-Class, maybe just 5-6 years. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So prices are crazy. I mean, imagine an E-Class nudging 1 crore. That was what you paid for an S-Class at that time. And people are still buying it. In fact, today the E-Class
is really sold sedan.
Most sold sedan, benchmark luxury sedan, and it's not at the cheaper end, it's not. So people are buying it. And I think that's what I'm seeing also in the luxury car market is that it's a very, odd situation that where customers are seeing value in the bigger, more loaded variants than the smaller ones. I think there's this whole thing which goes across segments is what I call the price to size ratio.
Right.
So you can have a small luxury car, but they're just too expensive.
Right.
So I think even Mercedes has realized that and gotten out of the lower end of the market, whether it's the A-Class, even the old B-Class that there was, they hardly sold really. And really, I think their center of gravity is the E-Class, C-Class to some extent. And then, of course, all the big SUVs which come, the GLEs and all. So I think it's this whole price to size ratio, which is really critical as far as luxury car goes. And that's why I think the center of gravity or the hotspot for all the luxury cars is higher up. So I think, it's interesting to see how customers are evolving. And frankly, at the end of the day, things like financing, leasing do help. But I think, if we had more leasing options or easier leasing, I'm sure that would also help stimulate the market, isn't it?
Absolutely, Hormazd. In fact, in the global markets, leasing is a preferred option. And that is what leads to a sustained replacement cycle with the buyers. The life cycles are shorter. Instead of using the vehicle for a much longer period, the vehicle is used a lot better, but somehow leasing in India has not really taken off, and it's got to do with the social fabric of acquiring and owning assets. And it's also a prized possession for many who actually own some of these luxury cars. So leasing has not really taken off, but one hopes, as the population gets younger, more matured, and we've seen the maturity kicking off in the last 5 years, that leasing option will potentially help the market. And financing has played a very critical role. In fact, Mercedes came out with some interesting, innovative wish box finance option, wherein people are actually, allowed to pay a much lower down payment with the assured buyback scheme that they have. So, I mean, there are various options being floated by luxury car makers. But the biggest question, Hormuz, always is where will the next 50,000 come from?
I think the chicken and egg. Firstly, you need to localize, but you don't have the volumes.
Absolutely.
Localization, and I think that way it's a good strategy. I think, or let's say the good policy. You localize, you automatically your taxation comes down. But we don't have the volumes, and the models are what I mean. It's so fragmented.
Absolutely, over 70 models.
We have over 70 models in that 50,000. So
I would just barely anything for one to localize.
Exactly. So very, very hard to localize. So I think that is going to be a challenge. I do think, at least CBU prices should come down. I think that 110% plus all the local taxes, just prices it out of the stratosphere. I mean, we drove that Revuelto for on the Navi Mumbai airport. I was just that car with that spec on road in Mumbai would come to around 10 plus crores.
Insane.
That's insane. I mean, you could get a pretty decent apartment for that kind of money. So, I mean, I think half or more is going in taxes.
Absolutely.
So, really, it is crazy. But people are still buying them.
Yeah.
In fact, Lamborghini had a record year, over 100 units. I mean, we've not talked about smaller players. We'll get into them. Porsche has done 1,000 cars. That's a big number. So, obviously, people are buying, obviously not to the extent they are in other big markets. I mean, as you said, China is a completely different ballgame altogether, exponentially more. But I think taxes are, to me, just one of the biggest inhibiting factors for growth.
And, Urbas, while I spoke of GST, there's an additional element of road tax. I mean,
that's right. Absolutely. And same states are
Kerala 20% on vehicle price over 10 lakhs.
Karnataka is also really.
Karnataka 18%, Tamil Nadu 15%, Maharashtra 13 to 15%, Gujarat 12%.
Yeah, so I think Maharashtra on the top end, they've got a cap on it. I think
capped at 30 lakhs.
Yeah, it was 20 lakhs just now.
It's gone up to 30
lakhs. Yeah.
30 lakhs. So it's insane. I mean, so one, you have the GST, really high GST. On top of that, you have the road tax. And
road tax with no roads, really. We just don't have the roads. So I don't know. It's really, it's unfortunate. I think, you really pay a price for wanting to own a really fantastic set of wheels here.
And I'm just hoping, and I hope, there was this thought that eventually the cess over GST will be reviewed. Now there are murmurs in the circle that probably if cess goes away, I mean, I think the date is somewhere in 2026. If the cess goes away, there's talk of introducing another slab of tax. If the tax slab is lower, I think with the GST plus cess, we are paying about 45 to 70%, depending on the size and the cubic capacity of the engine. If the slab is lower, it helps the market. Probably, that may be the trigger point for the overall passenger vehicle market to actually get to the next level.
And I think now also there's this wait and watch is, with Trump's policies and the pressure he's putting with his tariffs, will there be some dial back of customs duties?
Absolutely.
So I think everyone's waiting, and there is talk that could happen.
Absolutely.
It's
almost a given nowadays.
Yeah, as we furiously negotiate, obviously there's bilateral trade as well.
India UFTA.
Exactly. So, but I think, Ketan, let's now talk about the brands.
Right. Sure.
Top dog Mercedes.
Phenomenal.
I think absolutely phenomenal. They've really held their own. I think for the last 10 years, they've been at the top of the game. Though it was Audi that was the first to cross 10,000 units.
Absolutely.
But first luxury brand to have got to that thing, I don't know when it was, I think about
2010-11.
Yeah,
by the first case time.
Exactly. But I think since then, Mercedes has really taken the lead. And, talking about Mercedes, I think no luxury brand has kind of built the whole ecosystem, the model range, and really focused on the customer as much as Mercedes has. I mean, their products also have evolved, though I must say there's been a lot of change in it. In fact, today, the way luxury brands have changed, sometimes you get into a Mercedes or a BMW, you don't know what to expect. I mean, there's been a lot of role reversal.
Right.
For example, Mercedes have become a lot more sportier. The focus they put on the AMG range, is amazing.
Significant contributor to the top end vehicle.
Significant contributor. So really the way they've pushed, the AMG line is just phenomenal, and, some great products there as well. My favorite, which I don't think sells very well, is the A45 AMG, absolute pocket rocket. But even in terms of they are more sportier, they're even more hard-edged, which really isn't what Mercedes is about. And you get into a BMW, again, for the Indian market, they've been softened considerably. In fact, I would say today that BMW's, the ride quality is actually even better than Mercedes in many areas. Absolutely, But, again, Audi used to be, they set the standard for interior technology, with their virtual cockpit. They were the first to come out with that. But now Mercedes has taken that, let's say, taken that battle ahead, looking at their kind of MBUX system right now, which I think really is the gold standard for luxury cars as well. Their interior quality, which Audi also is still very, very good at. So I think it's a lot of mix over here. So, I mean, even with BMWs, the way they've evolved, to be honest, they're not necessarily better BMWs, they're just better luxury cars. Because sometimes all of them have, in a way, to suit the market and global markets and big markets like, China, for example, you have to kind of alter the DNA a little bit to meet the kind of tastes of the consumers. So really a focus on the backseat. I think what we should talk about is, I think, how Mercedes also, took the plunge with the long wheelbase E-Class. That was an absolute game changer. Because, that was going to be quite a gamble, because clearly a huge investment into a model that's only for this market. So, it's not that it can be shared with others. Okay, you do get some bits from China, but this is a right-hand drive model. So, it was made specifically for India. That worked. BMW has also followed suit with the 5 Series. Unfortunately, not done as well as Mercedes, which E-Class is still the standard. They've not understood the nuances of the backseat, how important it is. Though, dare I say, the 5 Series, the ride quality, the suppleness is better than the E-Class. But the overall backseat experience the E-Class offers, which is so critical for luxury car buyers, you cannot forget how important the backseat is. And I think that's where, the E-Class is able. So I think it's really understanding the Indian consumer, which is really very, very, very critical. Ketan, I also think, leadership plays a key role, and you take Mercedes, that continuity of leadership, and even right now, someone like Santosh Iyer, who's been, in the company for a long time in senior positions and now is the CEO. And, clearly when the man at the top really understands the market, knows the business, makes a huge difference.
Really heartening to see the sedans getting the kind of focus and how they continue to remain a very critical pie of the overall luxury car market, even as it becomes smaller and smaller in the mainstream market.
That's true. I think because, sedans have a certain status, a certain image, and in the luxury segment, that's super important. I mean, SUVs, of course, they're driving growth everywhere. And of course, they've been the big growth drivers for even the luxury brands as well. But so I think, Mercedes right at the top of its game. And I think they've become expensive also. I think some of them are even overpriced, the Mercedes cars. But I think what they do is they give value back in terms of the resale value, which is generally very strong. And I think the overall experience also with the customer. And I think people just, as I said, people don't mind paying, and it just shows the shift in the Indian DNA from going from cost conscious to value conscious.
Absolutely.
So if they see value, they don't mind paying that extra bit. And I think that's what Mercedes is banking on. But of course, BMW is snapping at the heels.
Yes.
I think BMW on the EV front really aced it. That's where Mercedes actually lost out. EQS, was not an S-Class, not an electric S-Class, whereas the i7 is a superb electrified 7 Series, and definitely, the luxury electric sedan today. It is the, again, gold standard over there. A phenomenal car, the i7. Of course, all of them suffer from ground clearance issues, but apart from that, I don't think there's a better luxury electric car or sedan over there. And again, on the EV side, BMW killing it with the pricing of the iX1. So I think on the EV side, they have taken that lead over there. So Mercedes is fighting back with the EVs and, models like the EQS SUV. I think that's really been a hit, and they've got two variants, the 580 and now the 450, which has a longer range. Just took it to Mahabaleshwar. Really very, very impressive. So I think the EV fight is going to intensify with the luxury car guys as well. Again, it's a lot to do with product, which again, the local operations are dependent on what's, being launched globally.
Yeah.
So BMW, I think, has kind of closed the gap with Mercedes.
Yes, they have.
And clearly, I think it's going to be it's sort of like a two-horse race.
It's phenomenal as to how in the market size of just 50,000, you see such fierce competitiveness. I mean, while Mercedes...
It always happens because small men are scrapping for, every small piece of the pie.
Absolutely. And I mean, you see, ideologically, Mercedes-Benz globally has said that they want to move up the price point, and they are moving up. In fact, just an interesting factor, you spoke about prices, Hormazd. The entry price for Mercedes-Benz way back in 2010 was somewhere around 30 to 40 lakh. Today, it has moved up to 89 lakhs.
Average.
I think the entry price point, I think. It has moved up to almost 89 lakh, which is phenomenal. And the entry contributor earlier used to be 25% of the market. Now it's gone down to 10%. So they have tactically moved up the price point. They're focusing more on premium, focusing more on luxury. However, BMW is playing a lot more aggressive pricing strategy.
Yeah, that's right. BMW is, I think, playing a much more aggressive pricing strategy. That's why they're getting the volumes over there. And, they've also got some, let's say their key really also the 3 Series traditionally has been.
Yes.
Long wheelbase 3 Series. Definitely, it's got the measure of the C class, for example. Yes. Whereas E class, has got the measure of the 5 Series. So clearly each one has their core strengths over there. But I think in this battle, Audi, which was, as we said, once, let's say the top luxury brand.
Fastest growing brand once upon a time.
Exactly, has really lost out. I think it's a combination of, let's say they've not got the models or the kind of cadence or the kind of...
powertrains also, moving out of diesel.
Moving out of diesel in 2020, I think that was a big loss because straight away you're out of 40% of the market.
For 40-50% of the market, yeah.
Exactly. So I think that was a big blow. Again, just shows, the kind of silly strategies global companies adopt. And it just shows that they're not committed to the market when you think that, okay, just because I've removed it globally, you shouldn't have it here. So, or let's say not focusing on diesel globally, they still have them. You don't want it over here. So I think they really lost out by taking diesel out of their mix. And I think also Audi's got into this whole kind of, let's say, spiral of, being seen very much as a discount brand. A lot of discounts on Audis today. Some great deals people have got on some very capable cars. I think to me, the A4 also is such a sweet car. We've had one. It drives brilliantly. Not super exciting, but for someone who wants to just go below the radar, actually Audis, are a good choice that way. But again, resale value, that sort of thing, they do take a hit. So really, they've dropped a bit. But I think the brand that has really kind of, risen is LR. Absolutely.
LR in J.
The LR in J. There's no J really, but LR's really. And I think it just goes to show that, just these handful of models, the Range Rover Sport, the Range Rover, it's a big Range Rover itself, the flagship, the Defender. I mean, they're so aspirational. And, everyone wants it. They really don't have any direct competition. They're just brilliant vehicles in terms of comfort, technology, just luxury, build quality, in terms of, just the fit and finish inside. They just smack of luxury. And they're super expensive as well, but people are still paying.
Yeah.
So really they're in, let's say, a segment even above the traditional, exactly, above the, the Mercs, BMs and Audis. So they've done some phenomenal numbers, and I think in this financial year they've overtaken Audi, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. I mean, they've been led by the SUV and the growing demand for SUV.
But I think what we've not talked about is that trigger point for them, and again, it just goes to show, the impact of taxation is when they went for CKD for their Range Rover and Range Rover Sport. I think it brought the price down by over 50 lakhs.
Yes.
And again, that triggered huge demand for these models.
Absolutely.
There's always a waiting for them. I'm always getting calls for people to say that,
can we get a quick delivery?
Can we get a quick delivery? So really, I think also the new management has really pushed for more allocation.
Yes.
I think they've done a really good job. So I think
really heartening to see that they are also looking at Tamil Nadu as another facility. So clearly goes to show that they have really high aspirations and they do see a much larger local footprint with locally manufactured models.
absolutely, and the formula has worked really well.
Yeah,
one would hope model like the Defender also will be localized.
Yes,
because again that model is very, very iconic. No real competition. I've just driven the Octa. It is absolutely unbelievable. Again, at the really a very niche model in that sense, but there is a certain pull and a draw. Land Rover has, and I think that's something the brand has capitalized on in India.
How do you look at brands like Volvo, Lexus, and of course Porsche? You own one.
Yeah, I know.
Growing luxury car.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Porsche has been probably as a brand goes one of the most phenomenal success stories, because they've increased their sales by 4 times in about 5 years. That's crazy. I mean, that's 4x. I mean, to cross 1,000 units, and I think Porsche is a very, very special brand, purely because of what it stands for. And, I think it delivers a lot in terms of performance, the way it drives. I think it's all about driving as far as Porsche goes. And I think they're pretty reliable as well. And to be honest, fairly, very well priced compared to their, let's say, more expensive competition, which is Ferrari and Lamborghini. Lamborghini, as I said, cost 100 units, all CBUs. And don't forget, Porsche also 1,000 units with all CBUs. Yeah. I think it makes a case for localization of key models like the Cayenne, which I think will happen.
What about Macan?
Macan, I think, is not the sweet spot right now. I think, again, it goes to the whole price to size ratio.
Absolutely.
So people looking at a Macan, they saying, look, I'm paying a crore. It's too small for a car that costs a crore. So then they will, stretch a bit and go for the Cayenne. So Cayenne really is the kind of pillar for Porsche in India. Obviously accounts for majority of their sales. And I think that would be the one they should localize, because with that, they'll get even more volume and grow the network, grow their brand. So I think Porsche really done an outstanding job, and some of their, their models are just absolutely fantastic. Iconic 911 GT3 RS. It's a track champion. It holds the lap record at the Bud circuit, which we set with Naren Karthikeyan. But again, with Porsche, with the EVs, not only in India, globally, they are struggling. So the whole EV story is a bit of a challenge with the luxury cars, because I think the resale value, it takes a huge hit. So I think luxury EVs is, really, I think, which is a big challenge. I think BMW, as I said earlier, have kind of got that piece the best, or they've kind of, seen the most success in that. But I think otherwise, that's, I think, going to be a bit of a hard sell still. But
having said that, Hormazd, but, at the luxury end, we've still seen penetration going up to almost 6 to 7%. Yes, definitely. It's what to do with EV and future is a big question mark globally.
No, you're right. I mean, I would correct myself. I would say, people expected the penetration of the growth in the luxury segment to be much higher with EVs.
Right there.
Volvo was talking about, 25%.
Yes.
Right. And again, if you see, Volvo sales have come down.
Yes.
I think largely because maybe pushing EVs too much beyond that point. So though the growth is really, really high.
On a low base, penetration may appear higher, growth may appear higher, but
that's
still lower is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think, it's not as rapid as people anticipated. People are talking about double-digit penetration, which, I don't think that's happened yet. So I think it will take some time. But I think clearly, obviously, luxury cars lend themselves, better for electrification. Clearly, the home charging is not an issue for a lot of people, which it is for most mass brands.
Bigger range.
You have bigger range. And the delta cost sometimes is cheaper.
Yeah, indeed, yes.
Yeah, so it's all there. Kind of
Enablers are there.
enablers are all there, but so that's why I thought it would be a lot higher.
Right.
Which is
I get it.
it's not as much as I thought it would be.
Yeah. How do you see Volvo in that context? Talking about this overt focus on EVs, and how do you see Lexus as well?
Well, I think Volvo, as we said, I think I think the spread of models isn't as much as say the other brands, the German brands are. Also, there are gaps in the powertrain as well. Again, I think not having a diesel is a challenge,
Right.
like it is with Audi. Lexus, I mean, very quiet. I don't think they're too serious about India. They've got one CKD model, the ES300.
Yeah.
They should be localizing a lot more. They've got a plant over there. But I think, it's just a question of focus.
Yeah.
I don't think they've got the focus which they should put over here. And, because honestly, the Lexus has a lot going for it. A lot of people do like the way the hybrids work. They don't have the wow factor of the German brands, especially the interiors and things like that. But, they have a very loyal, let's say, customer base who find the cars very reliable.
Yeah.
Cost of ownership is lower.
Yeah.
Though you think it may not make a difference, it does make a difference to a lot of people.
Definitely.
So I think it's got a lot going for it. But clearly, I don't think they've given enough focus on it.
What do you think of brands like Genesis? Hyundai has been thinking about bringing in that brand. We are waiting for Tesla. I mean, again, it's going to be a different price bracket, not the German luxury cars and the likes of Volvo, JLR and all. But what about probably Acura? I don't think so.
I don't think these brands would work, honestly, because, we are, as customers, we are still evolving. We pay a lot of, put a lot of value on brand more than just the product. And clearly, I think, Genesis pricing would be upwards of 60-70 lakhs. I think people would rather go for a known luxury brand because they want to flaunt that, So I think it'll be a hard sell, but obviously they have to start somewhere. So I think, I think it will be interesting to see as and when they come. Again, I don't think it's a big focus area for them, but they have to bring it at some point.
So there's a gap from the premium pricing of, say, mainstream car makers, 40 lakh to about 80 lakh. This is a nice sweet spot, isn't it, Hormazd?
There's a huge gap over there. There's an absolute huge gap. And I think if you see, the gap is even bigger because from the mainstream premium brands, let's say cars like the Skoda Kodiaq and all, which are Fortuner, which are nudging around 50 lakhs. Above that, you've got the very small luxury brands. You've got Audis with the Q3s, X1s, all in that bracket.
Right.
So again, it doesn't suit the purpose because for that money, you're getting cars which are too small.
Absolutely.
So technically, the gap for the same size is goes up to 80-90 lakhs.
Absolutely.
So it's a big jump over there. So really, there are a lot of gaps in the market, which I think are opportunities.
Hopefully, Genesis for
Genesis could be there, but again, will it be perceived as luxury enough? That's the whole question. I mean, today brands like Skoda, and even Volkswagen to a certain extent are really there. Let's say with their top-end vehicles, their own flagship vehicles like the Kodiaq are really taking the kind of luxury quotient to a different level. Right. But clearly, that snob value, the brand image, it's just not there of, let's say, a German brand.
Now, because you see the likes of MG Select, BYD, and potentially I see Genesis there. They've been looking at entering the Indian market. Once in a while, Infiniti was explored, but it doesn't look like, looking at the way Nissan's position globally is right now. So it's a nice 50 to 80 lakh is a nice place to be.
Big gap over there. Really not too much choice for, big, for wanting something that is, it's got the size which people want for a family. So that's why you've got cars like the E-Class really doing well, because people are then stretching and going for that. And it's amazing that people will start looking at something like Skoda Kodiaq and then finally, almost increasing their budget by 70 to 80% and going for an E-Class. So, people are doing that. So, clearly, I think sometimes the lack of choice is pushing people into different segments and even different price points.
Absolutely. It's a very fascinating story of the entry car conundrum that India faces, be it with regards to mainstream or be it with regards to the luxury car market. And I think that is where the organized pre-owned car market is shining through. I mean, we see it with mainstream. is growing at a phenomenal pace. And even in the luxury car space, now we have a car park of almost over 300,000 cars. And hopefully, the pre-owned cars actually become like the entry car for many of these.
Well,
aspirational
I
players.
think, I think we discussed this earlier. The biggest threat at the budget end of the car market was the pre-owned market. And similarly for the luxury segment, I would imagine, for the lack of choice of a spacious entry-level luxury car is probably a pre-owned model.
Yeah, and we are seeing that segment growing actually. We were seeing it growing much faster than the average car growth that we are seeing in the market. So hopefully, with maybe more choices and maybe market maturing on a pre-owned side, we're going to see many options there, Hormazd.
Absolutely.
So, Hormazd, the big question is, and something that we keep asking the heads of all luxury car brands as to when do they really see this market to take off? Again, the growth rate is down to about 3.5 to 4%, probably the slowest that we've seen since COVID. But there are a lot of positive enablers in the future. What's your view? I mean, before I could...
Well, I think, obviously, the tier 2, tier 3 cities, the rural markets obviously, have got fantastic potential. I think if you take a brand like Mercedes, while you see the overall luxury car penetration in metro cities, they're 2.5%, so it shows, the gap that there is with the tier 2 and tier 3 towns. So I think that is one area where I think there is a lot of, potential over there. And, I think also, let's say with a young demographic, I think with per capita incomes increasing, I think, it's a small base. I think if one segment that will grow, it will be the luxury car segment. I think a lot of segments are hit right now. It's going to be a tough year, 2025, for the car market. But I think at the end of the day, we are a very materialistic, aspirational,
growing economy,
consumer base and a growing economy. And, while other markets, the love for cars may be fading, I think over here, it's just growing and growing.
It's an interesting factoid here. So Hormazd, Delhi and Mumbai account for 15% of the overall passenger vehicle market.
Yeah.
But when it comes to luxury cars, it's about 40% of the
That's
total
right.
sales.
That again just goes to show that, the concentration is so much in the metros,
Right.
For luxury cars, that the potential and the gap in tier 2, tier 3 cities, it just shows that that's where I think the future growth should come from.
So some of the key highlights that whenever we interact with the top management, what we get is that the per capita is likely to double in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
India probably has the fastest growing ultra high net worth individual population. And, we're talking about 2.5, 3 lakh kind of people and a market size of just about 50,000. Clearly, there's much more headroom for the market to grow. And, with more options, hopefully with the change in tariff for the imported cars, probably that gives you a little bit of a leg up.
That'll hit the residual values, but I think, I think at least it'll
grow the market.
It'll
grow the market. And like you mentioned, I think the interesting part that we see in the demographic, the share of women buyers in the last 5 years, we've seen it increasing to almost 10 to 12% for the overall market, which used to be a minuscule share. There are a lot of salaried individuals which are coming into this space. There are a lot of startups, CEOs who are buying these cars. So, I mean, there is an increased penchant of more and more people to acquire. And like you mentioned, the tier 2, tier 3 cities, all the brands are penetrating deeper with a lot more matured ecosystem. It's definitely high growth.
As you said, I think for all these people, a luxury car is a symbol of success.
Absolutely.
And people want to flaunt that today.
Absolutely.
To show that they are successful, they've achieved something. And obviously, I think the way the economy has grown, clearly, you are seeing this trend. But I think going forward, I think it's going to be interesting the way, the luxury car pans out with electrification coming. I think there is scope over there. I just hope the, let's say the growth with EVs is it's kind of led by the luxury segment, and
Yes.
at a much faster rate.
The only worry is slowing growth rate. However, the positive side to that is the revenue per vehicle and the top end vehicle moving up. So clearly, the desire to own is there. The enablers are in place. The growing economy, the younger demographic, the expected higher per capita. So clearly, I mean, this is the market for future. Whenever we talk to global guys, they do mention that this is the future growth market for each one of them.
And I think what we've not forgotten, I think one big enabler is roads.
Yes.
Roads are coming. I mean, today, you look at even Mumbai, Atal Setu, Coastal Road. It's really kind of, let's say, a dream for luxury car owners or even sports car owners. And I think this will trigger growth further. So I think roads is very key. I think for a lot of the sports cars, earlier issue was with fuel. Now even that's gone. You're getting 100 octane fuel. 95 octane is so widespread. Companies like Indian Oil have really made sure that you get this high octane fuel in far-flung areas. So again, that makes it easier for people to buy these cars and run them and own them. So I think, let's say even infrastructurally, though, while cities are getting more congested, at the same time, roads are, being built. Quality of them, that's a separate issue, so I think it's in that sense, in a way, if you can afford it, it's not a bad time to have a luxury car.
And hopefully just the taxes get rationalized, and maybe we are in for a better time for the Indian luxury car market.
Exactly. So there are a lot of interesting developments on the horizon. We just have to see how they pan out. But I think one thing's clear is that, Indians love cars. The love affair with cars is getting stronger. And on the back of that sentiment and emotion, I think luxury cars, obviously, I think even though we have, let's say, a slowdown right now, it's just a temporary blip. I think this number is going to rise substantially.
Absolutely, Hormazd.
So that's it from us this week on Deep Drive. Hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to tune in every Saturday at 11 a.m. And to make sure you remember, subscribe to Autocar India so you stay notified, and you can also catch us on Spotify or Apple Music. And that's a good way to listen to us while you're driving.